I'm J5. This is Atom Bomb.
Hi.
I'm just here to express my feelings on a few certain subjects. Actually, mostly just one. It's pretty much how much I really dislike what Hot Topic is doing to our youth today.
Not so much Hot Topic in general, but we want to kind of clear the air.
Poser punks.
Punk versus fucking...
Poser punks.
Not even posers, just fucking douchebags.
Yeah. You know, I mean, when I was 11 years old, the way you dressed and the music you listened to represented the kind of person you were. You know? Now you get all these fucking tourists that go from scene to scene trying to find acceptance. You know? If there's one thing I can tell you right now about the punk scene, is if you're not an asshole or a drug addict, you probably don't belong. Yeah. You know? What I was taught at an early age was get strung out and you're eschewing. As fucked up as that sounds, like that's how it is, dude. You know? I don't know. That's another story, Asia.
Love it.
And that's Asia over there.
I'll have my eyebrows home.
Hi, beautiful.
Okay, so anyways, you know, I just have a serious problem with these kids. You know, they're like 14, 15 years old, and they're like, okay, I want to go back to school shopping at Hot Topics. You know, you walk in there, you walk out, and you're quote-unquote punk rock. That's fucking horseshit to me, you know? Especially how socially acceptable it is now to look like you're some sort of punk rocker, when in reality you're just a fucking tourist, dude. Take that shit back to the valley. You know, there's no room for that shit here. This is like something like...
It started off as a movement, bottom line. You know, for me personally, Johnny was talking about, you know, being 11 years old, and, you know, yeah, drugs were, you know, a major portion, but for me it was an escape. You know, anyone who fucking knows me or knew me when I was a little kid, like I was a fucking weirdo, dude. You know, I ran around in cowboy boots and listened to fucking The Offspring and thought I was the Green Ranger. You know? And I remember being like 12, 13 years old and saw this kid skate by wearing bondage pants, blue hair, and was hauling ass down the street on a skateboard. I was like, I don't know what the fuck that was, but I want to be it. And, you know, a year later I met this kid, Dave Pression, and, you know, me and him stole his older brother's CD, and across it said Adolescence, and I put it on a fucking random song. I was like, rip it up, seems like it would be cool. And the first time I heard Tony Cadena scream out those words, like, I lost my shit, dude. I found out, you know, I found what I wanted. You know, and I quickly got into the fucking skating deal. With that, a lot of fucking drugs, and none of us, you know, none of us went to stores and bought our shit, you know. The band shirts that we got were from shows we went to. I stole most of the Dickies that I got. You know, I lived in Chuck Taylors or I lived in Vans. You know, and unfortunately you got a lot of kids now that, you know, think that it's socially acceptable or socially cool, or they want to be, you know, part of something just to fucking be popular, and it was never about being popular.
Yeah, it's actually
you know,
the complete opposite of being popular.
We were the anti, dude. I remember being 14, 15 years old, skating down Main Street, beating the shit out of preps, skinheads, jocks, and any other fucking asshole, you know, whether it was a tourist or, you know, a local coot. And, you know, that's what we did. We were the fucking outsiders and the rejects to society. You know, my mom never owned a fucking 3-story house. You know, we got a couple of kids, I'm not going to mention their names, that are in the scene that, you know, choose to fucking go and squat down in Hidden Valley or around other fucking areas, and, you know, they got parents that, you know, are part of multi-million-dollar corporations. You know, places
and they want to revolt
have 3-story houses.
Stick it to mom and dad, you know, just to piss them off. It was never about.
It's like, bitch, my mom was on welfare, dude.
Yeah, like my parents were fucking
trash as they come.
My parents were immigrant beaners from Mexico and shit, crossing the Rio Grande. You know what I mean? Like, dude, I fucking I was the only Hispanic kid in my elementary school from kindergarten to 6th grade. You know, And then to top it off, in 4th grade, I show up in fucking tight-ass pants, creepers, and a fucking mohawk, you know what I mean? Like, I got beat up. I got shit thrown at me when I was walking or skating down the street. Because it wasn't fucking cool.
Douchebag.
Yeah, you fucking queer.
You don't belong.
Yeah, exactly, because I didn't belong. This wasn't something that I just fell into one day just to be cool for a week. No. This was something that was in me waiting to come out. You know? And I fucking made a decision. I made a decision to make this my life, to be a part of this movement. I didn't just turn into it when I was 15 and then 2 years later I'm wearing baggy fucking pants listening to Lil Wayne. No. Fuck that, dude. I'm almost 27 years old. I've been wearing the same style of clothes. I've been listening to the same fucking music for over 15 years. Yeah. I'm not trying to say I'm cool or anything, but I'm trying to say is like, there's no fucking room for tourists here.
You're cool with me, John.
I love you too. You know? And that's okay. Like, I just fucking have a problem that, you know, these kids one day decide that they want to go to fucking Hot Topic where you can go buy a fucking Fierce shirt, you can go buy a Minor Threat shirt, you can go buy a Black Flag shirt, you know, and some fucking tight jeans and some chucks, and all of a sudden you're punk rock. No, dude. I fucking had to sew my own pants because you couldn't go into a store and buy whatever I was wearing just because. Like, there was no place that sold shit like that. At least not where I grew up, you know? And I just don't get it, you know? They fucking come in for a year, they're all a year later there's something else. Yeah. Dude, that's not what this is about. And it's not even about the way you dress. I know some people that you look at him and you're like, this kid's a fucking nerd. But he's the most punk rock motherfucker that I've ever met. One of which is my roommate Cameron.
Seriously,
he looks like a total dweeb.
If you want to look at it,
down. He gets down.
Like, if you want to look at it, punk isn't so much like a dress or, you know, a specific music style or anything like that. It's always been a state of mind, and it's been around way before the 80s, way before the 70s.
Yeah.
You know, if you go back to the early 1800s, you know, you had people that played folk music, and that was the main era of the day. Eventually, you know, some slaves got sick and tired of hearing it, and, you know, they started, you know, figuring out this thing called the pentatonic scale. What came from that? Blues. You know, then blues all of a sudden becomes popular and trendy, and, you know, from there swing starts, you know, to derive from swing. You know, you get, you know, like a gentleman by the name of Mr. fucking Cash.
Yep, there you go.
You know,
Richie Valens, fucking Elvis Presley, fucking rock and roll. My parents fucking had to ditch school to dance to rock and roll in a basement out of a radio the size of a fucking 80 gig iPod.
Yeah.
You know, if it wasn't for them, if it wasn't for all the people over the last fucking 100 years, 200 years, you know what, we're cutting it short here. Pretty much, if this is your favorite song, you can go back to fucking Irvine.
He was a boy, she was a